and it was just like it didn't seem like they were talking to God, just sort of like, bless this food, oh, thank you, whatever. But when my wife prayed and when her mother prayed, I knew that she believed that she was talking to God. I thought,
Yeah.
wow, what type of faith is this? So it's different things that can attract other people, but just you being sincere in your beliefs and like Keith said, acting them out in your life. That's what really gets people kind of you know, hey, Hein, why
It,
why do you believe in these? The peace or this or that or whatever. So the other people really don't care. They don't have a curiosity. They don't want it. They don't want to change. People get very defensive about their own beliefs, and a lot of them are very aggressive. But they're aggressive even in their own church and even with everybody else. They're bullies basically. And bullies can never get enough. So you just have to. But I'll be talking about a few things today that might tie in with a little bit of that. But
Hello, hello.
you know,
Can I say something? Yes, Shabbat Shalom. This is your Jewish Adventist friend Mark here. First of all, Chaim, was a very good presentation. Chaim, I have a question I wanted to ask you. And before I mention it, and Miss Clark, I already mentioned this to you, but after today, when we change the clocks tonight, tomorrow, I go on a winter break. And so I will not be listening or be able to call into you all until next spring. Okay, so I will miss you all, but I appreciate your kind thoughts and prayers, okay, because I will be on the winter schedule. So I hope that's okay with you. Okay.
yeah,
So, Chaim, okay, thank you. Chaim, this week's parsha that we read in the synagogue today in the shul is called Parshas Noach.
yes.
And one of the things that's connected with is something called the Noahide, so the Noahide laws. Now, I was told originally there's seven simple laws that they have in the precept, but now I was told that they have a total of 49. In other words, each law you multiply by 7 has 7 specifics and all that. So they said it's 49. So first of all, what do you know about that? Or if anyone else knows about the Noahide laws, and what can we do to get these people to understand that, well, they're not doing the 613 mitzvahs, but about Yeshua? Do you have
Yeah.
any suggestions? Thank you.
Okay.
You may want to
That's
explain to people who may or may not know who the Noahides are and or what they do and so forth. Thank you.
I see. I had something on it. Um, okay. 7 laws of Noah. Yeah. So that's the Noahide laws. I'll have to come back to you on that, my brother. I had something somewhere. I'll have to go look at my files. Okay. But um, these are more. How would I put it? These are laws that does not really on how would I put it? Are they written or not written in the Bible? I don't know if you guys agree with me. These are laws that are verbally passed. No, laws. But I don't want to say too much because the other day I made a fool of myself because I had the wrong idea about something. So give me until next time, and I'll come back to you, and I have something. I have a paper on it somewhere, but let's just give Brent a chance to do his thing. But thank you, brother.
I'm not well. Actually, I'm not going to be on for a while
Oh, you're
during the
not going to
winter
be
once we
on.
change the
Oh
clock.
my goodness.
That's
Yeah,
why.
so I
That's
can't
why I
answer
just
you at
said
the
in the beginning.
moment. Yeah, I can't answer you, but when you come back, it gives me some time. I'll make a note, and I
That will be
will.
several months from now, but
I'll.
if the Lord tarries, and then we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey,
Okay,
yeah.
Mark,
they
I got
are.
a question for you because
Yes.
we're not going to see
Yeah,
you.
go ahead.
How do you display your tzitzis?
I have an undergarment, the sisters and all that, and the sisters sticks
Uh-huh.
underneath the shirt or underneath the four corners. Now, unfortunately, I got these from the Orthodox Jewish bookstore, and
Uh-huh.
they said they didn't find the right snail or the purple the dye
Uh-huh.
the so that's what it is. It's just white, unfortunately.
Okay.
It's not blue and white. It's just white. That's how it works. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, for the most part, if you're wearing any color beyond white in this type of community, then they wonder about you. Like, what's
Really?
with you?
Well, I
Yeah,
just
but
got
I
some
hope I
new
answered your
ones, and
question.
changing the way I wear them.
Oh, Mazel Tov. Are
Yeah.
you wearing it on a belt loop, or do you actually have an undergarment shirt that's attached to you
No,
already?
right now it's on a belt loop. I used to have it on a what they call a mini tallit, but I'm going to the belt loops right now.
Can we continue,
Oh, okay.
please? You guys can talk later. Thank you.
Today our reading is from Psalms 95, 1-7. Oh, come, let us sing unto the Lord. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before his presence with thanksgiving and make a joyful noise unto him with psalms. For the Lord is a great God and a great King above all gods. In his hand are the deep places of the earth. The strength of the hills is his also. The sea is his, and he made it, and his hands formed the dry land. O come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker, for he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand. And he also tells us to remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it.
Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Okay. Just to help a little bit answer Mark's question, because he's won't be around for a few months. The Noahidic laws, a lot of Christians don't know much about them because they really came from the Jewish Talmud. They're rabbinical laws, and basically
That's the word, yeah.
they are established kind of like in the Council of Jerusalem with the new evangelism to the Gentiles. The rabbis set up sort of a law that the Gentiles would have to keep that wasn't the same law as the Jews kept, and they call that the Noahidic laws, and six of them are derived from Scripture in Genesis, and one of them is kind of just one that they kind of came up with on their own. But they're basically, if a Gentile observed those laws, they were considered a righteous Gentile. So they kind of communed together. They didn't keep all of the laws of the Jews kept, but they were considered a righteous Gentile. So now they've expanded those 7 to 49, just like they continue to expand on the Sabbath laws. So there's like 650 Sabbath laws. So yeah, there's not a lot of, it doesn't have a lot to do with Christianity, and it's never been part of anything in the Bible in terms of the New Testament. They're not discussed by any of the apostles or anything, so it's really not something that we're all that familiar with. So just to answer your question, it's more of a strictly of a rabbinical thing. So anyway, welcome today. It's November 2nd, 2024, coming to you from BibleExplanations.com. Thank you, Hein, for your presentation, and we're starting here just 11:17 Pacific time, and on the Sabbath. And today's presentation is on the two witnesses in the 1260 days. Oh, excuse me. This is just going to be kind of an overview. I have a very special message on this, but it's a two-part message. Wouldn't be able to do it today, but maybe next week or next couple of weeks, but it's a very special mission. This is more just an overview, and a little bit of a teaser, I guess. So we've been studying the covenant code, and we've been following the instructions to measure the tabernacle and measure the temple, but we haven't really discussed that the first 3 verses of Revelation 11, which gives us that instruction to go measure. The first 3 verses say, "And there's given to me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood saying, Rise and measure the temple of God, and the altar, and them that worship there." We haven't really talked much about this part, but the court that is without the temple or outside of the temple, leave out, measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot 42 months. And I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, or 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. So this is all kind of together as one thing, but there was a court that was built at the time of Herod, which is at the time also that this revelation was given. Was the shortly after the temple had been destroyed in 70 A.D. This revelation was given to John around 95 A.D. But Herod had added a court for the Gentiles. So if you look at this little sort of map over here on the right, where you have the sanctuary, there's all in gold here, and then you have this little court that's up here. That's not the court that they're talking about. Herod added another court. So if you take this east gate over here, now this is the tabernacle. Of course, the temple was more permanent. It was bigger. It was bigger dimensions, but the same principle. Right where this gate is, they didn't want the Gentiles to actually come into this court where you brought in your lamb, you brought in your sacrifices. So he built another court outside of here, and the Gentiles could come that far, but not any further. And so in this instruction, it's in when we go to measure everything, not to measure that exterior court, that because it was never given in the original pattern. Herod added that himself. It wasn't given in the pattern that was given to Moses, and that it ties in that the Gentiles are actually going to trample the holy city and the tabernacle. They've been given the power to for 1,260 years, basically so during that time, God will keep his witnesses, and they will continue to prophesy to support the woman and her seed in the church, but they would be prophesying in sackcloth, which means in basically in mourning and in reverence and in fear, while this trampling was going on, because something was going to be happening over this 1,260-day period. So that whole which was really we discover over history and time, that was really the building of the papacy and all this sort of stuff, and there's sort of another church being built in parallel to this original pattern, and so that was supposed to be left out, and that would everything would come to an end at a certain time, and this is now we're talking about end times, and this is really the 7th generation, times at an end, and now what in this last call, what's important to God to show the last generation. And so it's to go back to the original tabernacle, the original pattern. But these 2 witnesses, or what we're talking about today, is and I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days. And I want to talk about that a little bit, because how that ties into us and into our mission, and who those witnesses are. So, in so the sorry, this is the continuation from the first three verses. Here's the next three verses. Revelation 11:4 said, "These are the two olive trees and the two candlesticks standing before the God of the earth," talking about the two witnesses. "And if any man will hurt them, fire proceeds out of their mouth and devours their enemies. And if any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed. These have power to shut heaven, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy, and have power over the waters to turn them to blood, and to smite the earth with all the plagues as often as they will." That's a long period of time to have that power, 1,260 years to shut heaven, it rain not, waters turn to blood. What the power of these two witnesses have. So we have to look at that whole context. That this is the two witnesses that are there for the benefit of the church, the benefit of the building of the tabernacle, without the building of the Lord's tabernacle. So we have to start looking at some of those clues. And we always have to look at it in terms of the covenant, because the tabernacle is a result of the covenant. The covenant was a seventh-day Sabbath. It was fulfilled when God and man walked together in peace and harmony. When that was broken, then the Lord said, "I will put my enemy between thee and the woman," talking directly to Satan, "and between thy seed and her seed, and he shall crush thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel." So he's saying that not thy seeds as of many, but thy seed, which is Christ. At that point, Adam called his wife's name Eve, because she was the mother of all living. Unto Adam also and his wife did the Lord God make coats of skins and clothe them. So this is beginning with Adam and Eve until the very last person on the very last day, the Lord putting himself, stepping into the gap and doing what was needed to be done according to the covenant to redeem man and to bring them back into the same house, into dwelling together, tabernacling together, so that the temple and tabernacle, everything else, is a blueprint of how God would do that. But when we look at things like in Revelation, we have to remember always in context of this prophecy, that's God, the work that God's doing through Christ to make it possible for man and God to dwell together in peace without sin. So, we start following the clues. When we hear the candlestick, we automatically think of Zechariah. And of course, he's tasked with rebuilding the temple when it was first destroyed. "And said unto me, What seest thou?" This is the angel speaking to Zechariah. And I said, "I have looked, and behold, a candlestick, all of gold, with a bowl on top of it. It has 7 lamps thereon, with 7 pipes to the 7 lamps, which are upon the top thereof, and 2 olive trees by it, one upon the right side of the bowl, and the other upon the left side of the bowl." So I answered and spoke to the angel that talked, saying, "What are these, my Lord?" Now think of this: so you got 2 olive trees. Remember, these lamps were lit by oil, but here you have this automatic process where you have 2 olive trees and this set of pipes that all go down into each of the candles. So in the tabernacle process, the high priest was tasked with keeping that light lit. He would come in every day and he would make sure he filled the oil, make sure he trimmed the wicks, all that sort of stuff. And that light, the candle, those 7 candles were always to remain lit. Well, here, it's like an automatic, keeping it full. The olive oil continues to flow from these trees through the pipes into each lamp, so it's always going to be full. It's really representative of a full measure of the Spirit. I mean, olive, like oil, is a reference to the Spirit. So you have these 2 trees, and they're and so Zechariah says, "Well, what are these, my Lord?" And the angel that talked to me answered and said, "Knowest thou not what these are?" I said, No, my Lord. Then he answered and spoke to me, saying, This is the word of the Lord unto Zerubbabel. Not by my might, nor by my power, but by my spirit, said the Lord of hosts. So this oil is directly a reference to the full spirit of Christ. This fullness of the oil of the spirit. The hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation of this house, this temple, and his hands shall also finish it. And we know that when we're talking about in prophecy like this, you can just replace the word Zerubbabel with Christ. The hands of Christ have laid the foundation of this house, and his hands shall also finish it. And thou shalt know that the Lord of hosts hath sent me unto you. For who hath despised the day of small things? For they shall rejoice and shall see the plummet, which is a measuring tool, in the hands of Zerubbabel, and with those seven. With what seven? Well, they are the eyes of the Lord, so the Spirit of the Lord, which runs to and fro throughout the whole earth. So this is spirit-based, because two witnesses aren't two individuals that lived for 1,260 years. It's the Spirit that when the Lord says, "I will be between, stand between you and the woman and her seed," then the descendants, of the woman. Well, when Christ came and he laid the foundation, then his descendants are those that accepted him, and who came to faith in God through him. It says in Isaiah that he will be pleased to see his posterity through those that accepted God through through Christ. So it's the 1,260 years of Christ standing between the seed of Satan versus the seed of Christ, and continuing to build that tabernacle, and continuing to empower people, and continuing to pour out that his Spirit onto the prophets and onto all those that he called. So it's but it's very much, even when you look in Revelation, where do you see the very beginning of Revelation? Christ standing in front of the great menorah in the tabernacle. So and who's he speaking to? John, one of his apostles, one of those that he called. And who's he speaking to through John? To us, to all those that he called. So so this is Zechariah getting answers from the angel. Do you know this? No. Who is this? Well, not by might or by power, but by my Spirit. That's how I'm going to build this tabernacle. The hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation, and his hands shall also finish it. Then answered I and said unto him, What are these two olive trees? Upon the right is the candlestick, and upon the left. And I answered again and said unto him, What be these two olive branches, which through the two golden pipes empty the golden oil out of themselves? So there's branches coming right into the pipes. It's like I said, it's like a little factory. And he answered me and said, Knows not what these are? I said, No, my Lord. He said, These are the two anointed ones that stand by the Lord of the whole earth. And we think about anointed. There's anointed king, anointed high priest. These are the only two anointed ones that were ever spoken of. Are and prophet, priest, king. But this oil that's going into this lampstand is coming from the anointed ones. It's coming, and these are the two. Talk about two witnesses. The witness to the sacrifice, the witness to the atonement, but also the witness to the Lord of Lords and King of Kings. Of who Christ really is, and it's God that's building this tabernacle, So the humility of the humbleness and humility of God is incredible, that he would tolerate any of this nonsense from us, all this doubt and all this people making up their own religions and doing. I mean, it's unbelievable that the Lord of Lords and King of Kings would just allow people to just insult so incredibly when he is building a home for all of us, and we go there kicking and screaming and fighting and whatever. But that's just the whole purpose, is him making it possible for us to dwell together again. So anyway, so he doesn't back off here. He makes sure that the spirit and that that there's the people in place, and that there's always a witness on earth, and always not just a witness but a strong witness that is ready to fight back when need be, and to 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 raise up people among generations, etc. Then we think about the chapter just before this. It says, "Now Joshua was clothed with filthy garments, and stood before the angel. And he answered and spoke unto those that stood before him." I remember, whenever we see this "stood before him," remember that the whole beginning of this was, that stand before the Lord, that stand, the two witnesses that stand before the Lord. So it's more than just the one person. It's the person and their comrades, they're the fellow disciples, the fellows in the faith, the fellows that have the same will and the same spirit. So he's answered and spoken to those that stood before him, saying, "Take away the filthy garments from him." And unto him he said, "Behold, I have caused thine iniquity to pass from thee, and I will clothe thee with a change of raiment. And I said," so this is, him witnessing this, "Let them set a fair mitre," which is a crown, "upon his head." So they set a fair mitre upon his head, and clothed him with garments, and the angel of the Lord stood by. And this is when Satan is trying to oppose this happening. And it says, the Lord rebuked him. So with Joshua, obviously that's, a foretelling of, what was done through Christ. But these filthy garments, these blood-stained, garments were removed, and a crown put upon his head, because this part was done, and this part was finished, and now it was time to lay the crown on his head and to give him, beautiful clothes, nice remnant, new remnant of clothes. And the angel of the Lord protested unto Joshua, saying, "Thus saith the Lord of hosts, if you will walk in my ways, and if you will keep my charge, then thou also shalt also judge my house." What house? The tabernacle, etc. "And shall also keep my courts, and I will give thee places to walk among these that stand by." Again, those standing by. This is more than one person. This is the community that's being built, the tabernacle that's being built, and you'll notice that it interchanges. For one moment they're talking about the tabernacle, another moment they're talking about a city, about Jerusalem, or the holy city, about the tabernacle, because it's all the same thing. It's the holy city, the end time Jerusalem is a city made by God for all of us to dwell in. And the tabernacle is the same thing. It's a pattern of dwelling together. And here now, O Joshua the high priest, thou and thy fellows that sit before thee. Again, it's, Joshua's not alone. The seed is not alone. The seed is it's a group of people, generation after generation, that God calls to be together. Like when he called the disciples, because that's when the end times start, is with the calling of the disciples. They're not alone. They're sent out two by two. They're sent out to prophecy. And remember, this Revelation 11 comes after Revelation 10, when we're told to go measure this tabernacle, and then go prophesize and go, preach to the world these basic things that we've seen in the tabernacle, the truths that we've seen, go out for one last calling. So, O Joshua, thou and thy fellows that sit before thee, for they are men wondered at. And so, in other words, even the ones that sit with Joshua, people gaze upon. Like remember how Peter would walk and just his shadow falling upon them would heal the sick. And Paul, he could send out a handkerchief, and somebody would receive it if he couldn't be there on time, and it would heal somebody or raise them from the dead. So even those that sat with Joshua are men wondered at. For behold, I will bring forth my servant, the branch. And now that's talking about Jesus. So Joshua isn't Jesus, but he's someone called up in the likeness and as a foreshadow. But I'll bring forth my servant, the branch. Well, who's the branch? And so we get into Zechariah, the next chapter. So we were in chapter 3, chapter 4. Now we go to jump to chapter 6. And speak unto him, saying, Thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, Behold, the man whose name is the branch, and he shall grow up of his place, and he shall build the temple, Lord. He shall do what? Build the temple of the Lord. Even he shall build the temple, Lord, and he shall bear the glory, and shall sit and rule upon his throne. Well, what's the throne? Is we've been talking about the throne room and the city and etc. He will sit upon the throne, and he shall be a priest upon his throne, and the council of peace shall be between them both. So we were talking about two witnesses, two anointed, a king and a priest. But in the branch, in Jesus, it's all in one. It's he will be a priest upon the throne, the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, and our Redeemer, our Savior, our prophet, our high priest. So it's from that source that all the oil flows. From that source that that the light is lit. I mean, I told you there's only two things in the tabernacle that were pure gold, and that's the lampstand and the mercy seat. The rest was wood covered with gold, because the pure gold is directly from heaven. And it's the most valuable thing. Is that the light of the world and the mercy of God through this covenant through his son. But it's his throne, and there's peace. There's not throughout, you can read in the Bible times when the king and the high priest are at odds with each other, or especially when you get into the pagan nations. There's all kinds of times when the priests were against the kingdom, and vice versa. So, but there's peace here. There's peace because they're all at one. And they that are far off shall come and build in the temple of the Lord. So they'll come in and start to help build this. And you shall know that the Lord of hosts has sent me unto you, if you will diligently obey the voice of the Lord your God. So that first part when we read it in Revelation 11, when we're talking about the candlestick and the olive tree, we have to look at this big picture. And so we could say, are those two, Joshua and Zerubbabel? Well, they're definitely types, but they're not two people that lived 1,260 years. The other candidate that's talked about quite a bit is Moses and Elijah, for good reason. And we want to look at some of those reasons for a minute. So first of all, the miracles they'll perform. So destroying their enemies with fire, withholding rain, turning water into blood, striking the earth with plagues, are similar to the judgments inflicted in the Old Testament by Moses and Elijah for the purpose of stimulating repentance. Elijah called down fire from heaven and pronounced a 3.5-year drought on the land, the same length as the drought brought by the two witnesses. Moses turned the waters of the Nile into blood and announced the other plagues in Egypt, recorded in Exodus chapters 7 to 12. So there's very good reason we're directed here. And we'll go through a couple more. Both the Old Testament and Jewish tradition expected Moses and Elijah to return in the future. Malachi 4:5 predicted the return of Elijah, and the Jews believed that God's promise to raise up a prophet like Moses necessitated his return. Jesus' statement in Matthew 11:14, if you're willing to accept it, John the Baptist himself is Elijah, who was to come, does not necessarily preclude Elijah's future return. So he came, and he was the forerunner of Jesus, but Jesus doesn't say he won't come again as a forerunner to his return. So there's nothing says that he won't come, nothing says that he will, other than that original statement from Malachi. Since the Jews did not accept Jesus, John did not fulfill that prophecy. He came in the spirit and power of Elijah to turn the hearts of the fathers back to the children, and the disobedient to the attitude of the righteous, so as to make people prepared for the Lord. So, so we have, good reason again, like I said, to look at Moses and look at Elijah, look at their earlier work, look at the relation to end times. And third, both Moses and Elijah, representing the law and the prophets, appeared with Christ at the Transfiguration, which is the preview of the second coming. So you saw Moses and Elijah there, and you heard the word of God saying, this is my son, listen to him. But Peter was, should we build a tabernacle for the three of you? No, Moses and Elijah are subject to Christ, and they were called just like Peter was called, and the others, they were called by Christ. Fourth, both Elijah and Moses left the earth in unusual ways. Elijah never died, but was transported to heaven in a fiery chariot, and God supernaturally buried Moses' body in a secret location. The statement of Hebrews 9:27 that it is appointed for men to die once, and after this comes judgment, does not rule out Moses' return, since there are other rare exceptions to that general statement, such as Lazarus, etc. So, would it make sense that Moses and Elijah would return, and that because it says that the two witnesses will be killed and lie on the streets for 3.5 days and then be resurrected, and their enemies would witness this. So is this the time that Moses and Elijah would literally be brought back, or the spirit of them be literally brought back into other individuals? We don't know, but what we do know is that it directs us directly to Elijah, to Moses, to Zerubbabel, to the high priest. And what does this all mean? Sorry, I just have to take a drink here. So we've been looking, I'm just going to check my time here. So we've been looking at the covenant code. We've been looking at this pattern that was given to Moses, and we looked at how incredible it was that the things we found in the tabernacle, beginning with the mercy seat, that these things in history happened in exact accord to this pattern in the tabernacle. And we're told something else about the two witnesses. We're told 1,260 days. And I want to kind of make sure we grasp this a little bit, and so I'm going to kind of go back and forth here a little bit. But so the last we got to was that when you add the Ark of the Covenant, you have a pattern here from Adam to the Ark of Noah, the 1,656 years, and then times 1.5, the Ark is 2,484 years, and that's the time between Noah and the ministry of Jesus, beginning in 27 AD. And why times 1.5? Well, because the mercy seat is times 1.5. And then its length is times 2.5. So 1656 times 2.5 is exactly to the ministry of Jesus. So from Adam to Jesus is 2.5 times this period to the ark, and from Noah to Jesus is 1.5 times the period from Adam to the ark. But there's another measurement, and we noticed that in our last discussion that the ark has a special feature on it, which is a 4-inch crown along the top of the ark, all the way around. It's pure gold, and it's in the direction that said make it a crown. So you have the mercy seat where the atoning blood was put on the Day of Atonement to atone for sins, and that sits very neatly on top of the ark as a covering, but it slides into this 4-inch crown, so that it's the crown is still there, and that height. So when you look at the height of something, that usually is the grand fulfillment. The height is given as another dimension, which is times another 1.5. So you have 2.5 times 1.5 times 1.5, or 1656 times 3.75, however you want to do it. So that would lead to right here to 6210, and that would lead to that in our day as of today, would be 2 years. Well, in 2027 would be that last 69-year brick would be the capstone, and it says that Zerubbabel will have that capstone in his hand. So anyway, so you have this last brick, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're not date setting and going, okay, it's going to be 6210, because I can show you several times when things happen in the beginning, middle, or end of that 69-year period. They happen during that window, but sometimes at the beginning, sometimes at the middle, sometimes at the end. Just like with Christ, the 33 years of his ministry. You had obviously his birth, and then you had an account of him at 12 years old, visiting the temple. Then you had his ministry. Then you had his his death and resurrection. So you had different events that happened in that 33-year window. This 69-year window, he could come at any time. But the long and short of it is, and we'll get into it a little bit more in a second, is that the general pattern we've observed is that everything, including Abraham, Joseph, everything we've looked at fits exactly into the same pattern, and it fits like a glove. And this is the tabernacle made by God. This is his people. This is the people he called, and those that are with him. Like we talked about, about those that are with you. So Noah wasn't alone; he had his family. Abraham wasn't alone; he had when Joseph entered into, or Jacob entered into Egypt, there was 70 with him, or including him. So there's this continual building by God of his house and those that are with them, and he calls them, in his righteousness, and they begin to evangelize those around him, or in the world. So you have this 1260 days. You have this these two witnesses. I just want to show you something a little bit with some numbers here for a second. So I want to pay particular attention, first of all, to this 621 years from Adam to Enoch. So this period of time is exactly 10 times that, 6210. Right here, 6210 from Adam all the way to this time in our generation, as it is from Adam to the 7th generation, which is Enoch, who is the 7th. This Revelation generation is the 7th generation as well in the book of Revelation. So there's this period of time. But what about this 1260 days? Remember, we've talked about before, and I showed you before, how a literal observed year is in relation to a prophetic year, where a prophetic year is 360 years or days, and an observed year is 365.2173913 days So there's the difference of, over 5.217 days per year between a prophetic year and an observed year. But we noticed something very cool, which is exactly every 69 years. So 69 observed years is equal exactly to 70 prophetic years, because those 5 days, little per 5 days, per year, times 69 accumulate to equal 360 days after every 69 years. So when we're looking at all these numbers, every one of these numbers is divisible by 69. 1656 is 24 by 69. 2484, 360 times 6.9, or 36 by 69. So they're divisible by 69, which means that they're also prophetic years. So, for example, 2,484 observed years is equal to 2,520 prophetic years. I showed you how to get that before, which is you just take 2,484, you divide it by 69, you times it by 70, and that's how many prophetic years it'll be. So it's 2,520 prophetic years, which is 360 times 7 is 2,520. This 1656, when you divide it by 69 and multiply it by 70, you get 1,680 prophetic years. Just like there's 168 hours in a 7-day week, there's 1,680 years. Sorry, 2,484 is 6.9 times 360. 2,520 is 7 times 360. So if you take 2,520, what is that when you compare 1,260? Well, 2,520 is exactly 2 times 1,260. 1,260 plus 1,260 is 2,520. And I've said to you the other day that this whole, when you're trying to reconcile, man's number is 6, God number is 7. And when you try and reconcile two numbers, you find the lowest common multiple. And from 6 and 7, the lowest one is 42. That's the lowest number where they have, where they can both be divided into that same number evenly. And we notice that in prophetic years, 4,140 observed is equal to 4,200 prophetic. So 4,200, just like the 42 months of 1260, 42 months, it's this 4,200 years is the 6 and the 7 can be equally reconciled together. And that's the whole thing about what God's doing, is reconciling man back to God. So so when you look at 621, for example, observed years, that's 630 prophetic years. And what's 630? That's half of 1,260. 630 times 2 is 1,260. 1,260 times 2 is 2,520. So, you start off here, the seventh generation is 630 years prophetically. And it's none of this is by accident. So when we get to the end of 1,260 days, then then God raises up his prophets, and that that last calling happens. The 1,260. Well, let me just go one further. It really, well, I better go to the next slide to show this. So 1,260 divided by 2 is 630. Observed years, 1,242 divided by 2 is 621. 42, 7 and 6 can equally be divided into it. What about half of 42? What about 21? Well, not in a whole number, but you can have 21 divided by 6 is 3.5. 21 divided by 7 is 3. But we know that 1,260 is 3.5 years, is 1,260 days. times and a half time. We're told specifically time 360 times 360 and 360 is 720 and a half time. And you add them together, you get 1260. So if you're taking observed time, 4140, if you divide that by the seventh generation, 621, you get 66666. By 6210, you get 10. Same with prophetically, 6,300 years divided by 630 is 10. 6,300 divided by 1260 is 5. So this is exactly 5 times 1,260 years. So this is really important about understanding that we haven't got to the patriarchs yet, Adam, like Abraham, Isaac, etc. But we see really clearly there when we start looking at the patriarchs that the 69 is really 69 times 3 is kind of one bigger stone. And then so you have 69 times 3 is really the bigger stone, and it gets broken down into 3 stones of 69. In world history, the time from Adam to exactly when Abraham brought him up to the mountain as a sacrifice is 2,070 years. And from that time, with Abraham up in the mountain to 27 AD is another 2070 years. And from that time to the end capstone time is another 2070 years. So it's like 207, 207, 207, all divided by 69. But you take that into prophetic years, it's 210. 210, because this is 2070 observed is 2100 prophetic. 4140 observed is 4200 prophetic. 6210 observed is 6300 prophetic. So this capstone event, this last capstone really is 210 years. Well, when did that last capstone begin, and why did it begin at that time? So 210 is divided by 3 is 70. So there's 3 bricks of 69 will be left after that capstone. And it starts at 1889, because 1889 is exactly 6,000 years from Adam in observed years. Not prophetic years, observed years. 1800, is prophetic years. But let's just stay focused on this. So the capstone window, the first window would be between 1889 and 1958. The second 69-year period would be 1958 to 2027. The third period, the final period, would be 2027 to 2096. So that would be the final kind of 210-year prophetically, 207-year observed capstone event. And we know in 1889 there's Chris has talked about it, other people have talked about it recently, what happened in the church and the controversy and really it was about the law versus works and spirit, and there's a great divide then. Well, that happened right at that 6,000 year period. At the and like I said, and then there's 3 windows. We're about to enter this last window. So when we talk about, well, who are the 2 witnesses? Well, the 2 witnesses is because this is the culmination of all of history and of all of prophecy. So it's Christ. It's it's the latter rain. It's Christ pouring his Spirit into the last generation as the last call. And could it be a couple of individuals plus those that are with them? Yeah, it could be. Could it just be the whole church of generation? We don't know for sure. Could it be Elijah and Moses or the spirit of them? We don't know, but we know it's going to be consistent with the original tabernacle pattern, and the message is going to be that original pattern, that to show the house to the house, to show that, to show God's grace, God's will, everything through the Lord, all that He's accomplished, this supernatural power of and the certainty of His coming, the certainty by when we can look at things like this and look at the certainty of what's done in the past, with the certainty of what's going to happen today, and with the humbleness of realizing that how incredible and supernatural the truth of God is. So when people want to argue or bicker about feast days or whatever, these numbers are all based on, 210, that's 7 months times 30 days. And there's only that many days of the holy days. After the 210 days, then, the next one begins the next spring. There's reasons for everything, but 7 times 3 is 21. 21 divided by 6 is 3.5. So there's you start with a small reconciliation, and it gets bigger and bigger. And by the time you get to, for example, 42, I can reconcile 6 and 7, but I can't add 5 and other numbers in there. I have to get to 420 before I can add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 into a reconciled number. So when you get to 4,200, and it's like a law unto itself. Like it's all mathematics is a structure for, like, a law. It's being able to explain something in numbers, explain it and repeat it and show it as a pattern or whatever. And this is a law. This tabernacle plan, this was given to Moses 3,500 years ago in the middle of the desert, when there was the first writing ever done on a scroll, basically, where full words, full vowels, like the whole context could be described, numbers written down, dimensions, everything. And the things we're talking about today, that was history has occurred since then, and this tabernacle pattern has the history in advance of its occurrence, including this was 1,400 years, actually 1,440 to be specific, before Christ was born. And how many minutes in a day? 1,440, which is amazing that the year of the Exodus, it was 1446, 45 that they entered, 1406, 05 when they exited. Jesus was born, somewhere, 4 or 5 BC. No, that's exactly 1,440 years from the Exodus to the birth of Jesus. Anyway, everything happens on a specific timeline, all according to what God gave us to observe. He gave us the seventh day to observe, and we, and He gave it as a sign of the covenant, a sign of His, Him being our Creator, Redeemer, that we walk together in peace without sin, a memorial to that day, and restoring that time again. And so all these numbers that we've been given, so that when we're going back to measure, we've only just begun to measure tabernacle. I keep saying that, but I'm just trying to get everybody caught up to speed, sort of thing, so we can go measure some more and look at other things. But as when we've never talked about this 1260 number. We've never talked about the 2 witnesses. But 1260 is not an isolated number out on its own. 1260 is a way to reconcile 6 and 7. It only gets you, a half number, like 3.5. But, that's why there's, and another thing is that if you take this date that we looked at, 1889, that's in prophetic years, that's 1260 times 4.83 when that happened. Remember I told you 6300 is 1260 times 5. Well, that's 1260 times 4.83. What's 4.83? 69 times 7, just like the prophecy in Daniel. So that's when Daniel's when the Messiah came, 27 AD, was after 483 years. This last brick hits, at 1260 times 4.83. So there's a lot more behind it. Like I said, I can, I have a kind of a special presentation I can do about this whole thing. But I wanted to just kind of share today to keep your mind open, keep your eyes open, and your heart and your spirit open to the fact that these things aren't given just for willy-nilly sake. They're given so that, as a blessing to us. And so when I got on earth earlier, people were talking about arguing over, observance of holy days or whatever. It has to be a blessing to you anyway. If you're going to keep the Sabbath just to score points or do whatever, it means nothing. It doesn't do you any good. If having that opportunity to not have to work, to not have to have other day-to-day responsibilities that you have through the rest of the week, but to have the opportunity to gather with your friends and your loved ones, and or together, even in this assembly, and to be able to praise God and to speak with Him and have to speak with you and to tabernacle together, and have peace. The phone's not ringing because all your friends know that you not to bother you on this day, and the ones that don't observe along with you. It's got to be that type of pleasure, spending time with the Lord, that we get this blessing from. It's like being in heaven on earth, and that's the whole thing. It's a rehearsal for heaven, so every holy day and every holy Sabbath is the same way. If it's not a blessing for you, then it doesn't matter, so but when you can see that these things were given for our benefit, and that's how God operated this whole covenant plan, this whole blueprint for the covenant, was because of his covenant response to man's backsliding and man's falling away, and him coming in, stepping in the gap himself, and making sure from that day till this day that there's always a light in the world, and that he continued to build the tabernacle, that he paid the price of redemption and atonement, that he made it perfectly clear so we could never miss it, that this was from God, that Christ was from God, that he is who he says he is, and that he will do, and he has done what he said he'll do, and that we find ourselves in this blessed generation, and our only requirement is to be that witness. That when it says who's the witness of generation, the seventh generation, we are. We are that witness. That and the two witnesses. Yeah, I think Ellen White described it as the Old Testament, New Testament. But in order for prophecy to be fulfilled, you need two witnesses. You need one to declare it at the beginning, to foretell it, and one to foretell or to declare it being fulfilled. We have a responsibility to say that everything that God foretold, he has fulfilled, and he is fulfilling now, and that his return is imminent. It's not, it's imminent, and it'll be in our generation. And to have the courage to say that. All your dates that I know not. Read what we just go through the series together. What does Jesus say? You do not know the hour of the day, therefore watch and pray. And who do you watch? The watchmen, the prophets. Who's the prophets? Ezekiel made him a watchman. What's Ezekiel supposed to do? Measure the temple. What are we supposed to do? Measure the temple. We're doing exactly like instructed to do. And we're coming up with some observations that no one else has come up with, no one else is talking about. And so no one understands the 1,260 days other than, oh yeah, 42 months. Well, and they feel, pat themselves on the back that I understand the 1,260 days. But do you really understand that the 1,260 days, now we're in the last, 210 years of the 1,260 days. In fact, we're in the last 70 prophetic years of the 1,260 days. Yes, 1,260 passed, but I mean 1,260 when you go all the way back to Adam. And there's this little window between the 6th and the 7th, this little period of time, where God is set aside for his calling, for this and for this 1,260 to have ended, in the 1800s, like 1798. In prophetic time, when the Pope went into captivity, et cetera, et cetera. But that was, when he called his witnesses. That's when Ellen White, when the first witness, when we're talking about two witnesses, that's her. That's that's the who God called in that generation. Immediately when the clock struck, then that was her. We're after that, but we're in our generation, and he calls people in our generation as well to continue. There's always a light in the world, and we are that light. It says a city can't be hid on a hilltop. Well, the tabernacle is considered this city, coming down from heaven, etc. It's just dwelling together, being together, witnessing together, studying the Bible together. It's not a controversy or a you're right, you're wrong. It's show me, show me what show me the truth, and and rejoice over it. So anyway, looks like that's probably my time. I'm a little not too bad over, so I'll stop the sharing here for a second, and so I can see you face to face and see if there's any quick questions or comments. I know Chris had I threw a few little things in there for Chris. Did a few questions before. Did that answer some of your questions, Chris?
Yeah, that's very interesting. Talking about 1888 and
Yeah.
some of the other patterns, and all of that was really cool. One of the things I was also thinking was the patterns from Adam all the way through to 6210 or 6300 to whatever you want to call it, the end of Earth time. How many different little patterns of sort? I know there's 69 years and there's 70 years. You mentioned 360 years and 1260 times 5. 1260 times 5 is 6,300.
Right.
How many more little patterns like that might there be?
Quite a few.
Quite a few.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they all are based on the 6th and the 7th, reconciling between the 6th and 7th. And really, you're going to see it's actually between 6,666 and 7,777. It's that's the final one is this reconciliation between 6,666 and 7,777. And it sounds complicated, but it's not. But basically, it's all like I said. So, for example, just 1656 is 69/24, right? So you can just say, well, 6.9 days times 24 hours is 165.6 hours. If you take 7, it's 168 hours, 24 times 7. But also 165.6 observed hours is 168 prophetic hours. So you have this thing where the Sabbath, the 619, the seventh, every week we observe 24 6.9 24-hour period. So there's exactly the same amount of seconds every week as there were days between Adam and the flood of Noah. There's 604,800 seconds per week. Take 604,000, grab your calculator for a second. Let's just do this together. So take 24 hours. I'm counting on you, Chris.
Yeah, 24 hours.
Okay, 24 hours times 7
Times 7.
times 60.
168 times 60.
That's how many minutes? Times 60.
10,000. 10,080 times
Times 60.
times 60 again. Yeah. And that's 604 hours.
604,800 seconds, right?
Seconds. Oh, okay.
I'm trying to figure out how many seconds there are in a week.
Okay.
So I take 24 hours
Uh-huh.
times 60 minutes times 60 seconds times 7 is 604,800. Okay. Now take just divide that by 1656. That same number, 604,800 divided by 1656.
365.
365.2173913, right? That's how many days there is in a solar year. So there's the exact amount of days between Adam. So every week, let's say from this Sabbath to last Sabbath, the exact amount of days that Adam, Enoch, all the 10, Jared, all the days that they lived were equal to how many seconds passed between this Sabbath and last Sabbath. So when he gives us something to observe, it's incredible. And he gave, and what was Noah's, what does Noah's name mean? It means rest. I will give him rest. What's the Sabbath? A rest. So he didn't give us anything for willy-nilly stuff. It all honors the past. It honors all of his people. It honors him and the work that he's done. That was the ark of salvation. So you're going to see that. So the first period is like a 7-day week. Well, the second period between the ark and Christ is, I just showed you, 2,520 prophetic years. It's 2,484 observed years. So 2,484. So it's like 6.9 times 360 is 2,484. 2,520 is 7 times 360. So it's like a Sabbath year. Just like a Sabbath year. Prophetically, 7 times 360. It's a Sabbath. Remember, we were given a Sabbath day and a Sabbath year. And what's supposed to happen on the Sabbath year? The earth is supposed to rest on the Sabbath year, right? And what's the blood of the curse of Cain killing Abel and your blood being poured out into the earth? And the earth is cursed now because of that. And when does Christ perform that? 2,408, so 2,520. Now there's a 7-year rest. So 1656 is like a 7-day rest, then a 7-year rest. And then you take the time between Adam and our time, and there's another rest. It's a jubilee that we get into that. So it's not, it's there's a lot of little patterns in there, but they all lead to the big pattern, which is Christ reconciling between the 6th, which is man, and the 7th, and getting rid of that 666. So it's but it's so, and because it's in the Bible, it's incredible because if I imagine if you told somebody this right now and they had a chance to go in there and start erasing numbers, you know, they'd be at it pretty quick. Get rid of that 1656, make it 1620, get rid of that 2484, because you wouldn't want the Bible to have that much accuracy. And that, don't have people worship on the seventh day, make it the fifth day. But it was all proclaimed in advance by God, and it was all written by Moses at the time when there was no writing. Almost, it was written on scrolls, and all the prophets since that time. And so it just validates, when people say today, "Oh, well, the Bible wasn't written by the authors that say it was," or that they came along later and they made it look prophetic by adding them in later. Well, here's a pattern for the tabernacle itself that predicts it all anyway, even without a prophet. Shows you that these things are going to happen exactly these times. The prophets got their information from the tabernacle. That's when they started to prophesize about, that he would come like a lamb, and that he would be led like a lamb to slaughter. The tabernacle pattern was in place before those prophecies came into play. So anyway, it's incredible to think of a shepherd, 80-year-old shepherd, being led out into the desert when they're using sundials for timepieces and writing this pattern for every piece of furniture and everything in here and all the ways and days of observance. And then you can look back and see how everything in world history happened according to that date. We haven't looked at, for example, when the Roman Empire fell and when, the other things happened in the world, but they all have happened according to that date too. For example, 46, the big number on the tabernacle boards. And when you look into, 4,600, when Jesus was 4140, and you look at 4,600 and 46,666, that all has to do with the Roman Empire and the fall of the Roman Empire and the beginning of the 1260 days, etc. So anyway,
For historical footnote for you, in your 69-year gap, you come up with 1958.
so I couldn't hear that. Was that George?
Yeah, that's what it is. Oh, hang on a minute. I gotta turn off our. Yeah. Okay. In a historical footnote, in your 69-year gaps, you got 1958 in there.
Yeah.
That happens to be when the Adventist Church was meeting with the evangelicals to be told what not to include, so they could not be labeled as a cult anymore.
Right. Good point.
Footnote, they all line up.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah, that whole Vatican Council stopped everything, but
Well, this was before the Vatican Council. They were meeting with. There's two guys they met with.
yeah.
Was it Burnhouse and Martin?
Martin,
Yeah, and it was 1958 questions on doctrine.
Yeah.
No, good point. But that's that window. It ended, ended and started, and that's really when like the last generation stuff really is too. But the next one is 2027. So do I expect something to happen in 2027? Yeah, absolutely. Do I know what that would be? No. And I'm not trying to pretend I know, but something's, but that's when the latter rain will get ushered in. The good news and bad news of that is usually when the rain comes, it's because it's really needed because other bad things are happening, right? And what it means when it says that the prophets have an ability to hold back the rain, it really means that the people will thirst for the true word of God, but the only place they'll find it is through those witnesses during that 69-year period, that last period. So in other words, there'll be people thirsting for the truth because maybe bad things are happening, but they won't find satisfaction out of anything but that message from final witness. That's where they'll find the truth. That's where they'll start to build. It's like, okay, I believe that God's with these people. I believe that God is, I can see that God's with these people during this time. I can see they have the truth with them, So that's why we just have to really kind of continue to study and be confident. Like, when we were talking earlier on today, you get beat up long enough. I mean, you can be telling the truth, and you can know you're telling the truth, but you still get picked on every day on the way to school, and still get beat up for no reason. You start to lose your confidence. I'm gonna get beat up again today. But we got to get over the getting beat up psychology, and know we got the truth on our side, and we got God on our side, so we can proclaim the truth without any fear, without getting argumentative, or without getting just, here's the truth. Jesus is coming in our generation. Oh, date setter. Oh, peacekeeper.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you the truth. Would you like me to show you? Yeah.
Well,
Okay. Well, let's sit down. I'll show you.
another little side light, whatever may happen on Tuesday, 3.5 years from that date is what? 2027. What a shock.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. No, it's definitely, yeah, definitely times are I mean, people have churches, and people have decisions to make, and sometimes they just can't get over the hump and make, like, it's 88, 89 stuff. Like, you can go this direction or that direction, but once you go, it's kind of hard to go back one way or the other. So, we have a responsibility that to keep the message pure. Keep the message pure. No, don't include the outside court. Don't include the changes that were made to the days or times or ways. Daniel said they'll try and change the days and ways. Keep it pure. Keep it on that inner sanctuary that was trampled by, the Gentile church being built. The Gentile church being built, starting with the papacy, but also now the Protestant church. They've adopted every one of those. Not first of all the Sabbath, that's the Sunday, and then every one of the other Vatican feast days, Easter and Christmas and Halloween, and so the holy days, according to the Bible, have all disappeared, even in Protestants. So that church trampled on the sanctuary. It trampled on the Sabbath. It trampled on the Passover. It trampled on first fruits. It trampled on Pentecost. It trampled on trumpets. It trampled on atonement. It trampled on tabernacles. It wiped them all out. And those are all covenant holy days. It's a covenant from God, and these are days marked in His covenant that He would fulfill. So that's some of the 42 months they trampled on it. And by the time 1800s came along, and now you're starting to talk about the sanctuary again, and the sanctuary message and the Sabbath. It's like coming to life again all of a sudden. Like, well, that's been trampled for 42 months. It took 42 months to trample that thing down. Now you bring it back to life again, and and yeah, and in the end time, you're talking even more of this nonsense, about all the feast days now, and about, yeah. So anyway.
Now, this is Mark here. I want to make one observation, if you will. Today, we finished up the biblical festivals last Friday, and as everybody knows. However, the Romanists and the folks, Protestant Union and all that, they're just finishing up their 3-day festival today. That started Thursday, yesterday, and today. And today is so-called All Souls Day, whatever that means. So they also had their annual fall counterfeit festivals. So they're finishing up today for what it's worth. So I just want to point out there's a huge difference in allegiance and worship between last week during the holiday of Sukkot, Feast of Tabernacles, and this whole thing from let's just say from Satan, the counterfeit. So I just wanted to point that out, what it really means. Thank you.
No, it's a good point, Mark, and we we talked about that earlier this year, that, Halloween is Saint Hallows Eve, and then you have All Saints Day, and it's all talking to the dead, praying to the dead, having the dead pray for you and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, it's a pagan holiday that was, like I said, it replaces these fall feasts, of the Bible. And that's what I mean by trampling on the sanctuary. See, all of those things that happen in the sanctuary. The sacrifice was brought into the sanctuary from the altar. The priests communed in the holy place. The Day of Atonement was in the most holy place. They all happened in the sanctuary. They're all, because it was all, the sanctuary um, represents heaven. So it would end up, even if it's from the altar, it would end up in the somehow being part of the sanctuary. So when this outside court stampeded through and made its own days, their own ways, then the sanctuary was no longer needed. It was no longer part of, that picture anymore. But the Lord didn't let that happen to stand. It gave them the full height, the full time that they were granted to go ahead and do that. And now it's over. Now their time has come to an end. And now it's the Lord's time to destroy that Tower of Babylon, and call his people first out, saying, "Come out of Babylon, come out of here, my people, and come and let me show you the truth and the beauty of it." Because it's just like Babylon itself. I mean, it was meant to be like a paradise, but it was all manufactured, to try and please the queen. The hanging gardens, et cetera, et cetera. But it could never be Eden. It could never be the beauty that Eden would have been, naturally, planted by God. So man's best is nowhere near uh, an imitation of God. So anyway, any more questions or?
Well, going on what Chris had said, I know a lot of you have read these, but he was talking about 1890 and stuff. Mrs. White said in 1892, if the people of God had gone to work as they should have gone to work right after Minneapolis meeting in 1888, the world could have been warned in 2 years and the Lord would have come.
Yeah.
And then, who of those that acted a part in this meeting at Minneapolis have come to the light and received the rich treasures of truth which the Lord sent them from heaven? Not one. God meant that the watchmen should arise and with united voices send forth a decided message, giving the trumpet a certain sound, that the people might all spring to their post of duty and act their part in the great work. Then the strong, clear light of that other angel who comes down from heaven having great power would have filled the earth with his glory. We are years behind. So that's, us, we've got that other angel, the fourth one, that's getting all of them together. And
yeah, it's
exciting time to live.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it really is. It's something where we don't even recognize, and if we would just allow ourselves to be as much of a sponge to actually, pray for that latter rain, but actually open our heart and our mind to wanting Christ to fill us individually and corporately, so that your walk with God couldn't be any closer. Because I believe that's what He's desiring for us. In this last calling, I believe. I mean, He empowered the disciples with and send them out 2 by 2. And I really believe that he's going to make it known. And then in time, he's going to make it known who he's with and who he's not with. And it was always important, like when Moses went back to tell the people and to free them from slavery, he said, how am I supposed to believe that you're with me? That I met with God in the middle of the desert? They're not going to believe me. Well, I'm going to give you this rod, or look at this rod. So in front of them, you can do signs and miracles to show that I'm with you. I'm going to show them that I'm with you, and prophecy is the same thing about, okay, well, we didn't get to see those miracles, but the next generations could read what was foretold and see it come to fruition and know that that was from God too, that the prophet couldn't have foretold that without knowing it in advance. So these things were given to show. Jesus said, if you don't believe me, believe the works. The works I do are from my Father. If you don't believe that I am him, even when he was talking to John's disciples, tell John, the deaf are hear, the blind see, the dead are being raised. So that John would be comforted that this is the Messiah. I didn't make a mistake. This is the one, So it was the works that he gave, that gave that his people that extra shot at knowing that this is the one. And still, even when he did these works in front of the hard-hearted, ones that had rejected religious leaders, they never denied the miracle. They couldn't. It was done right in front of them. They just denied where it originated. Oh, this comes from Satan. And that's when you find, when you're talking about observing holy days or whatever, what do you get most commonly? Oh, that's legalistic, that's satanic, blah, blah, blah. All these accusations, when it's not, it's completely biblical. It's not doing it that's not biblical, So anyway, I just believe that God has a very special, just like we read today, not by my might, not by my power, but by my spirit. And that was what was that referring to? The question was asked, what are these olive trees? What are these branches? What don't you know? No, I don't know. What are they? And the first answer is, it's this unlimited oil. The trees that are never stop flowing the oil that stand in front of the Lord of the earth all the time. And then, the people stand with them, and they're always having somebody stand in that place, and it's just like this unlimited oil. And, and we have, get blessed to have access to that. But you're not going to get it when you're not standing in the right place. If you're not in the middle of the holy place, right at the lampstand, you're not getting any oil. You're out in the courtyard, sweeping up the dung. So anyway, I'll wish everybody a happy Sabbath, and we'll do a
Bye-bye,
fuller
everybody.
explanation of that.
Yeah, Shabbat Shalom. Hopefully, I will talk to you sometime in the spring if the Lord tarries and all being equal. So I hope you all have a meaningful, safe winter and everything. And
So
Shalom,
Mark,
Shalom, sure.
So Mark, I wasn't quite sure what you
Yes.
said. You said
Take care, Mark.
you said something like
Thank you.
the clock is changing, so I won't see it till spring.
That's correct, because I'm going on the winter schedule tomorrow when we change the clock, so I won't be able to listen to you at all, period. Okay, if you understand that, because of the time zone. And so I will be hopefully back sometime in the spring when we go back to daylight savings time at some point in the future. Seriously.
Are you talking about your broadcast or your, like, how come?
They're listening to the broadcast here because the time is, because I have other obligations and there's no time.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right.
You get the
All right.
idea.
Well, thanks for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you on your return.
We'll miss you, Mark.
Thank you. As we say in Hebrew, lahitraot. Yes, Hashem is sure.
Lahitraot.
You do. Shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Thank you, Brent.
Always gone in the winter
All right.
if you can't get back in time. Anybody else have anything to say? Any comments or questions?
Just Marty, I got my mail from you. Thank you.
Oh, I was just fixing to say I got it in the mail the same day we talked.
All right, Chris, did you have anything else for him? About that?
So yeah, anyway, we'll do a special one. Do you have a quick question, Chris? Or
I just recognize that God raises up a mighty message, and Satan doesn't like it.
yeah,
But I do have I do have a bunch of questions, but I don't know. I could email you or something. But maybe one of the questions or thoughts. It was really beautiful when you were explaining the 42 months or 1260 years of like Daniel 8, where it
right.
says the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot. And you said that the sanctuary has been trampled for like 1260 years, which kind of ends, Adam to 2027 or 2096 or well, anyway, I'm not sure exactly how you're getting there, but then you also have the 538 to 1798, the 1260
Right.
period. But you're talking about how in 2027, I think the beginning of God's time to raise the sanctuary back is
Right.
is really a nifty way of looking at it. And maybe raising it back also includes the tabernacle code in 2027 or hereabouts. And it was just really beautiful to hear that
Yeah.
trodden down but lifted back up after so long, 1260 years of Daniel 8.
That's the whole point, and that's the thing that people think is okay. What's the special message that's going to come? What as advanced as what special message do we have? Well, we already have it. The Sabbath and the sanctuary already have the message. In fact, the only difference is maybe it didn't quite go far enough. Maybe it's not just the Sabbath, but the message of the Passover and of atonement and of the whole importance of the tabernacle to the covenant. The whole reason why all this was done by the Lord and why it's all fulfilled by Him. So it fell a little short. That's where we talked about before the third angel's message being really brought to fruition, and even Ellen White admits this or foretells it, by that next angel, by the fourth angel, or by the seventh angel, the angel of chapter 18 in Revelation, really takes the third angel message home, and the glory that fills the earth. If you take if you could take this message we're talking about right now, and you could just say, what if we could sit down for a week and talk with 100,000 people in Africa just about this message, and whatever else you believed, let me tell you the story about God from the beginning, from Adam and Eve and the covenant and all the things that happened, and let me show you the evidence and things. I would almost bet that 99,000 would just leave glorifying God. Wouldn't Now in some other places like Germany or where it might be tougher, but still, even in a tough audience, if you could get their attention for long enough to speak about it, because I've spoken to some tough cookies, and in minutes I got them, interested, going, well, let me just see that number. Where'd you get that from? If you could just get their attention long enough, because people don't want to believe a lie, and but the ones you have the problems with, just like David, David had his biggest problem with his own brothers. They're the ones that said, David's ready to take on Goliath. His brothers, King Saul, nobody wants to take on Goliath. But David says, what does a man get when if he can conquer this pretender? He gets to become prince. He gets this. He gets that. And his brothers would come on, go tend those few little sheep. But David literally, was not scared. He had tended those fields. He had the Lord had proven himself to him. The Lord had stayed with him, and he had killed bears with a slingshot. He wasn't afraid. He was not afraid. And so, but his brothers were, because they'd never had the experience. They didn't want to go one-on-one with a giant. The giant, no, a giant, but a guy who in front of the giants has a shield bearer, carrying this huge shield and this huge javelin that can whack him on the head from 30 feet away. Like, are you crazy? Who'd want to fight that guy? But David had no intention of going hand to hand with the guy. It's just something where it's your own brethren sometimes that say, don't don't say that message out loud. Just keep quiet, tend your little field. Don't be so outward with them, because people will think we're crazy. If you say that out loud, people are going to think we're a bunch of nuts. We're peacekeepers. We're this, we're that. So just amongst us, you can go ahead and speak, but don't say it out loud. When the truth is, if you're not embarrassed and you're not afraid, and you go, this is just the truth. It's this beautiful message that people want to hear, but you don't go out there trying to, if people are interested, that's all that we have to worry about is if people are interested in hearing the message, then proclaiming the message. And we're only scratching the surface. We got so much to do next week, the week after, just continuing to study and to go, wow, look at this over here, look at that over there, and people contribute. Like when I said 1958, and George brought up what happened in the church in 1958. Like, I don't know that history. I'm not a, second generation Adventist or that sort of stuff, so I don't know. I don't know the history even of 1888 or any of that stuff. I'm just going direct from the Bible. That's all I know is what I've learned and observed through the Bible. I don't know any. I never been belonged to a church or any of those things. Like my family was anti-Christian. They belonged to the Mormon church for a little while. That was it. So anyway.
Well, I wanted to say I was thinking about it, and you're talking about the tabernacle and all this stuff and what we're teaching and what we need to know and everything. And if you go back to when you first started with us, I know you were thinking about it before that, but when you first started, people believed in 1844, they believed in the sanctuary, all this stuff. Since then, I think the devil has really not liked your message or our message, and he's really worked on people, because since then we have lost quite a few, and they say 1844 is gone. We don't believe in the sanctuary. We don't believe this. We don't believe that. I don't know if they're trying to make their life easier, but the devil's really, really messing with their minds. And
Yeah.
it just, that what we're doing is right, because he's not happy, and we have to just keep going. And I thank you again for everything you're giving us, because it's just proving it. And maybe some of those people will hear without us knowing, and we may never know, but they may come back around and say, you know what, there was something to it, because they've given it up. Sad. I mean, that gives up a lot. Like, all your charts would be worthless if they don't believe in 1844, 1888, none of that stuff. Mrs. White, any of it, your charts would be worthless to them. They wouldn't even care about the numbers.
Well,
It's just
Jesus told the disciples, first of all, to evangelize to the Jews, and then
Right.
the Gentiles.
Right.
So for 3.5 years, just the Jews. And it was actually the event of Paul stoning Stephen, or holding the coat
Right.
and watching them stone Stephen, that sent the Jews scurrying out of there, because now they're worried that they're going to get stoned by this prosecutor, this aggressive Paul guy. So they spread around, and that's when they started to evangelize and baptize people outside of Jerusalem. Well, and it happened to be exactly 3.5 years later, which now was 490 years, and so but it really spread very quickly from there. And it was some of those people that kind of rejected the message at first to the other Jews that really caught on later after the Gentiles started to accept it and stuff like that, that came back, you know. And I think the same thing with this message. I don't expect a lot of Adventists and other people to come rushing in and going, oh yeah, yeah. I expect some, you know, but I really think that once it gets out into the world, you know, it's broadcast out and more people can see it and stuff like that, then it'll draw attention. That'll call people back in because they'll go, oh, I know about that. I know about the tabernacle. I know about whatever, and they're coming out of curiosity then. But anyway, you know, you know, I'm proud of your ministry and you know what you've done and what you continue to do, and I don't know, we you know we're learning together, and by the time we finish, even the next year or two, we should have quite a library of things for people to look at and for references or whatever. So anyway, and we're
Daddy started it going to the Adventists because he said, you know, we need to go to the
Yeah.
church, and he really tried. He had a lot of them reject it, but a lot of them came in,
yeah
and now we're starting to go where they're leaving. So it's time, and we're starting to go to the world. We're having people I don't even know, you know, interested. So
yeah.
see what
Well, you
happens.
know, you're that you know that you know, in a ways that's kind of it's a new territory, but you don't have the bias. You know, you don't have the the
Right.
prejudice sometimes. So people are more willing to listen. But yeah, I really I think it's an exciting time, and I really believe that we just have to just follow along. I mean, the
Listen,
the group of speakers that you had the first couple of days of Tabernacle and stuff like that. I mean, all the messages were so tied together. Like starting off with Chris and but they're so tied together. They're really like and everyone did their own thing, but it was almost like everybody had the same theme almost, you know. And so I really enjoyed that. And so that's the spirit working, you know. So but anyway, I'm yeah, we're happy to move on and good to see everybody. Have a
you too.
happy Sabbath and nice spending time with you again.
Thank you, everybody, for being here.
All
Yeah,
right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
Shabbat Shalom B'Shem Yeshua, Lohit Rout.